at Wainer Orthopedic Specialists. The doctor is Murphy Wainer inside the office today with Dr. Bailey and Meccariello. Dr. Bailey, good to see you. We talked to Dr. Kramer several times over the years. You've kind of come in, kind of stepped in. Well, he's now gone. You're here. But you're doing a lot of the same things he did. Talk about some of your responsibilities, right? You told me about you're working a lot with Dudley and other schools and working directly with a lot of people.
Yeah, so I'm a primary care sports medicine physician here at Murphy Wainer Orthopedic. So I spend about 4 days a week here in the office, and I actually specialize in ultrasound and ultrasound-guided injections, as well as other non-operative treatments for orthopedic issues. So I do a lot of that while I'm here, seeing athletes as well as just other active people who happen to have pain in their joints and muscles and things like that. So I cover as well multiple teams here in the area. So I help a lot with our high school football as well as just other sport outreach and help with the athletic trainers. I'm one of the main people that focuses on concussions here in our office. And then I also do stuff at Dudley. That's my main high school that I cover. I'm the head team physician at Greensboro College as well. And then I'm our main team physician for the Greensboro Grasshoppers.
So you keep up the Grasshoppers too?
Mm-hmm. I do.
Yeah, I guess they've been fairly healthy so far this year.
Yeah, they've been doing a great job, so we're really happy for them.
The last time I checked, I was always talking when I broadcast the games, I always mention the Murphy Wainer injured list. Got one kid on there right now, Lonnie White Jr. is on the injured list. I think that's it for right now.
Mm-hmm.
Not sure how he's coming along.
Yeah.
But you talk about all the things you do as far as concussions. That's a tough area now too, because there's a lot of fine lines about when a kid can go back in the game after leaving the game.
Absolutely.
Kid wants to go right back in, I'm sure, but sometimes you got to wait and check things out and be sure everything's correct.
Yeah, and I think honestly the biggest piece of that is having good athletic trainers, and we're very lucky that we have a lot of great athletic trainers at our schools, and getting them to kind of have that good rapport with those athletes and being able to have the athlete kind of come to them when something like that happens so that we can evaluate them appropriately, and just making sure that the coaching staff as well as the players understand why we take concussions so seriously, and that bad things can happen if they go undiagnosed and we're not treating them appropriately and they get back in and they have some sort of other injury or something like that. So we're very lucky, like I said, that we've got that good rapport with them, and I see them here in the office to make sure that things are going okay and to kind of go over all of those things. There's lots and lots of studies that revolve around concussion, and we've got really good data that there's actually international consensus on. So that's what we use here to try to get people back to sport as safely and effectively as we can.
Dr. Bailey and Meccariello with us from Murphy Wainer Specialists at Murphy Wainer. You know, the weird thing is, people think about concussions, they always obviously think about football. There's so much hitting going on. It can happen in basketball too, and you're a former basketball player. Sometimes basketball players will hit the court, hit their head on the court, and they may have a collision on the court. So the basketball thing with concussions is pretty serious too sometimes.
Absolutely. You can get it from anything. I mean, and you actually, your head doesn't even have to physically hit something. It can just be the act of a quick whiplash kind of event where your brain is just hitting within the skull, and that can still do that. So making sure that people understand those things, that you don't have to have that, historical, oh, my head physically hit the ground to really have that injury.
I'll tell you one thing, a lot of these things kind of run hand in hand. I do the running every day, and I do the walking on the weekends, cut down some of the impact, not too much, the impact on the body over the course of time can wear you down. So anyway, I was doing some walking last Sunday, and we had some rain Sunday, so I'm walking down this concrete sidewalk, hit this path. All of a sudden you get down to the bottom of the sidewalk and there's like a combination of mud at the bottom and water, which is about the slime. I've got these flat shoes on from basketball. I just got through shooting basketball and doing the walking, so these flat shoes are kind of slick. Hit that slime, all of a sudden completely slide out underneath and wham, hit that sidewalk. I was able to think I caught most with my hand and my butt, because I was about to have that meat back there. But if my head would hit on that concrete, I was just thinking, man, that could have been bad news.
It could have been bad, for sure. Absolutely.
You never know. I mean, little things like can happen in a second. You just never know.
Absolutely. They definitely can.
And sometimes they don't happen because you're in bad condition, just kind of an incident. Things just happen, pop up.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and you talk about all the concussions. Talk about also the weather right now, because the weather is affecting everything currently, all this heat. And think about doing running and walking and exercising. And one of the things, like when I run and exercise and do that workout in the mornings, coming back in, and you think, gosh, they say drink water. sometimes you think, man, water is good, but sometimes water is boring. There's no taste. You want to drink a soda, you want to drink something that has a little sugar. Give us the correct advice about what to do in this heat as far as replenishing the fluids in the body. I know we're supposed to drink the water.
Yep.
We want something that has a little bit extra, I guess, push to it.
Yep. So getting something with electrolytes would be helpful as well. So they have a lot of actually things now where you can get like liquid IV is one of those things. I'm sure they have off brands of that as well, where it's actually powder you can add to your water. And if that's the best way that you're going to get that fluid back in you, that's great, because we just want you to get that fluid back in you. And honestly, when the heat is as bad as it's been, if you can avoid being outside at all and doing some exercises indoors, I know it's boring. I know the treadmill isn't that fun. You'd rather be outside, doing that kind of stuff. But when the heat is that severe, that's the time that you start needing to think about, getting indoors if you can. Really watching for making sure that you're well hydrated days before you plan on doing that running, right? So we need to make sure that you're at a good hydration status. I don't want you just down in water right before your run or right after. We need to make sure that you're on that regular, well hydrated level. And then just watching really well afterwards to make sure that you're getting that replenished and you're feeling okay. You don't want to go back out too soon. Full body cramps is not normal. Need to see somebody right away if that's happening to you.
So I guess the key is to start hydrating, just continue it repetitively over and over again.
Yep.
Never just keep that same push going. What about this? Here's part of my philosophy about the heat. I say get in it. I say get out in it, and if you push it and push yourself in it, it seems like I get adjusted to it. I get used to it. I'm out in it, so I force myself to be in it and to get. I don't run any air conditioners if I can help it.
Yeah.
Because I figure if I do that, my body is going to relax. I want to get my body toughened up, I guess. Toughened
some
up
acclimatization, absolutely.
Yeah.
And that is, that's why we see a lot more issues with athletes, like say the beginning of when football practices are starting. But then it's not so much that the heat is drastically decreasing, which it does over time, but the most of it is those first few days, you got to get the players used to the heat. So in that situation where you're going to be outside and you can't help it and you're not just, running here and there as like an older person that's just trying to stay active, absolutely getting out in the heat and trying to get used to it is good, but still making sure you're staying well hydrated.
The problem for the kids probably is, unless they've been told to be out there, they probably stay inside in the air conditioning in the summer. Yeah. We always think about the first thing about the kids, about the video games, and about they're playing those and kind of taking it easy and not going out because it's too hot. And the thing about now is, back in the day, it wasn't as regulated. It's very regulated now. You can tell a kid, let's go practice. Kids say, I'm not going to practice because right now it's too hot. And sometimes there are times when it's considered too hot and you cannot practice because of heat regulations and restrictions.
Absolutely. And actually, we've got particular restrictions placed on us by Guilford County school systems. And all of the athletic trainers are up to date on that. They get a wet bulb globe temperature. So that tells you not just obviously the temperature, but that has to do with the heat that's coming off of the surface that you're on. It has to deal with the amount of humidity and stuff like that in the air. And that can tell you if players are at a extreme risk of having some sort of heat illness, and that's when they would shut it down.
You mentioned the bulb. I was thinking about the bubble, but it is the bulb you got to watch out for. Yep. And I tell you, it's going to be rough. Is like you've got a morning football practice, and say they just mowed the field the day before, the day of, and all that dew and all humidity, and just mowed that grass. I mean, that increases the levels in the field as being thick as much as any I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah,
that's tough to practice in too.
Absolutely, it is. It's all. I mean, this time of year, and especially this year, it's just so hot. I mean, we're going to have to be really on our guard for these athletes, making sure that they're well hydrated, like we said, way before these practices even start, and watching for those signs of heat exhaustion.
Well, give me the analysis about this. I'm out running sometimes in the morning, and it's going to be hot, you're going to sweat and all that stuff, and that's going to be one thing you think about. But I got to think about, too, sometimes you run for a while, and all of a sudden your muscles and joints start getting kind of weak or kind of tired and kind of painful. It feels like the heat's getting in there and can break you down there too. Is that possible?
It's not that it's necessarily breaking things down, but all of this has to do with the way that your body is metabolizing what it makes sorry about that. But basically it's changing the way that your body is metabolizing things. So as you are producing energy and moving around and things like that, that creates metabolites, and your body has to kind of get rid of those, like the lactic acid, things like that. So that's going to change all of that stuff. And as well, you're going to get fatigued. So a lot of that pain and kind of energy or weakness that you're feeling is related to some fatigue with that. So making sure that you're not pushing too far past that. I mean, and I always tell my athletes, it's so important to know your body. There is a difference between a good workout and being tired tired from a good workout and your body yelling at you, telling you that something is wrong. And good athletes know the difference. Good athletes know their body. They know the difference between a soreness and a true pain and things like that. So really trying to get that idea of what that is, so that when you're running, you know, okay, I'm okay to push past this little bit of soreness or this little bit of tiredness, but I'm not okay to push past this.
You know, I've been out there since about 78 when I started doing this running kick years ago, and pretty steady as she goes all those years. Anyway, so I tried different this year, which is probably completely off my chart, but I've done this, and I did it today, been doing it the past couple of weeks as a different approach, is go for about 1.5 miles, maybe a mile or a little bit more, whatever, and then stop. My thing's always been never, never, never stop. STOP is a bad word in that exercise. You don't say you go forever till you. Jim Valvano says never quit going, never quit trying. Anyway, but got to that point, I'll go for about 1.5 miles or a mile and stop, and then wrestle and then run some more and kind of run hard, like these intervals, I guess you say. I found that to be kind of pretty productive, and it seems like it works pretty good in the heat.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's fine. And that gives you a good chance to kind of get a little bit of a recovery in there and then try to figure out where exactly you're able to go from there. So am I able to kind of keep going, or do I need to stop?
It's probably one of the key points you mentioned there is the recovery thing, how quick you recover after those workouts. If you're falling out, you're probably in bad shape, but Absolutely. If you recover a few minutes, whatever. One thing I try to do when I finish too is do the running thing at the end, try to do some walking to what kind of bring it back down.
Absolutely. A good cool down is essential. Making sure that you're getting that heart rate back down, making sure that you're getting your breathing back under control, making sure that you're letting your body kind of regulate back again, it's sweat and all that good stuff. Absolutely. A cool down is essential.
So you got to be your own judge about this thing. How much your body can take, you got to do that on your own then.
Absolutely. And like I said, good athletes know their bodies. So if there's anything I can recommend, it's just really empowering people to understand what's going on with their body and to know what their limit is.
And again, it's probably different with the kids. You got to regulate them closer because sometimes Absolutely. They don't know and they can't really figure these things out.
Absolutely, and that's why we have things in place like those athletic trainers and the coaching staff that are well educated on this so that they can watch that closely.
What's the main advice you're giving these kids as they approach these first football practices? They've been doing it all summer anyway. They've been going to 7-on-7s, doing a lot of different drills and activities and things. What's the main advice you give them as they approach that first official day of practice around August 1st?
Keep moving. So the biggest thing I can tell people is try to move as much as you can during your off season, because that's the better that you're going to be when the season starts. So if they can stay moving now, if they can stay in shape now and do all those things, they're not going to be hit as hard when that season starts, and that's going to decrease the chance of them getting injured and having any issues going into the season.
So that would make a difference in the first day of practice versus the second day of practice. Your first day, you get it all, you're going, you can do it. Second day, you may be feeling pretty rough going back. Absolutely. So if you're ready to go the first day, your second day is going to be a lot better then.
Yeah, absolutely.
And kind of keeping those same things in different terms, does that apply for adults too, as far as now someone who runs into some problems, arthritic pain and nerve pain, things like that, does that come sometimes due to the lack of movement when a person gets older?
It definitely can. We used to think that people who had arthritis, they shouldn't move. That used to be the thought. Now that's not the case. Now we know that movement is medicine. Moving in good ways is going to actually help and be more protective to your joints. But we do that in ways that are smart, right? We do that in ways that aren't hurting us. If you're having significant pain from activity that you're doing, please don't do that. We need to find a different one. Ones that are really good specifically for people who have bad knees, because that's commonly arthritis that we deal with a lot. I love doing recumbent bikes for those people, as well as water exercises, because you can get that good movement, you can get the joints moving, body flowing, but you're not actively loading that joint repetitively. So those are great things, but many, many times I tell my patients, just move your body in some way or another during the day. And the amount that you need to walk during the day, that changes, from when you're 20 to when you're 40 to when you're 60. And it's dropping, as kind of you get older, once we're kind of getting past that 60 range and things like that, but we still want to keep your body moving. I had a patient one day, I think she was probably like in her late 80s, and she said to me, if I quit moving, I'll die. And I know that she's right? But that's such good insight for her to have, because she knows she's got to keep that body moving, because that's going to keep her strong, and it keeps you happy too. So
How do you tell the difference in arthritic pain and nerve damage or nerve pain?
So arthritic pain is going to be more of an achy pain. It's going to be more kind of concentrated around those joints. A lot of times it can be sore kind of in the morning when you wake up, a little bit of stiffness, gets a little bit better, and then, towards the end of the day, if you've been using it a lot, it can get sore again. Nerve pain is going to be more of a constant kind of nagging pain. That can be like a burning, a tingling, numbness, those kind of things, and that's typically related to nerve stuff.
How do you treat that?
So that kind of depends on where exactly it's coming from. So the best thing I can say is if you're experiencing anything like that, it's a good thing to see a physician who's well versed in that, whether it's an orthopedic physician or primary care sports medicine person like myself, because we need to determine exactly where that's coming from. I mean, if it's into your hands and arms and stuff, that can be coming from your neck. If it's into your legs and down to your feet and things like that, that can be coming from your back. And those are different things we need to address because they can sometimes be associated with weakness, and weakness related to nerve damage needs to be acted on pretty quickly.
What kind of exercises do you do for arthritis, and what kind of exercises for the nerves?
So as far as the nerves, again, it would kind of differ on what exactly the pain is, and I would say I can't really give a blanket statement as far as what would work for everybody because it would all depend. So really there are exercises that can be done, but it would depend on what the actual issue is. A lot of those can deal with range of motion and stretching and things like that to kind of help with decreasing the inflammation around those nerves, but there's not a one size fits all because certain problems you wouldn't want to do a type of exercise and certain ones you would, and you wouldn't know that without seeing a physician. As far as arthritis, the best things you can do, and what I try to explain to my patients is the physical therapy exercises and things like that are not going to fix the arthritis, right? The arthritis is a bone problem and that's not going away. The only way to really fully get rid of that is to have like a knee replacement or, if we're talking about knees. But what we can do is we can strengthen all of the muscles around that. So if your knee is moving in an appropriate way so that there's no weakness around it, all those muscles are strong, they're keeping that knee well supported, it's going to move better. And that's going to help with your pain and that's going to help with more longevity. Whereas if you think about it, if one muscle or something is weak, instead of your knee kind of moving like this, like it's supposed to, it might be sliding over here and rubbing even more and causing more irritation and more arthritis. So the stronger you can get those muscles, the better. Making sure your quads are strong. One of the big things I see with people, hip abductors. So on the side, doing those side leg lifts. Those are some of the best things you can do, especially in people that are big runners, because if they're not running zigzags regularly or targeting that with exercises, it's going to get weak. And that actually helps stabilize the knee and helps with tracking of the kneecap. So that's a big one I see people miss.
See, one thing, you want to get a realization of what you're saying there. I say go to like a Grasshoppers baseball game, get there about maybe half hour, 45 minutes for the game, and just watch how much stretching those guys are doing. You'll see guys that do all those leg lifts, all those stretchings, all kinds of, you think, man, that guy's just catching a ball or feeling the ball or trying to hit a ball. But they stretch like crazy before the games.
Absolutely. And they warm up for the games. I mean, they are there pretty much all day getting ready for the games. So I think that should make people understand, like, hey, even if I'm a weekend warrior, I got to do something that morning to make sure that I'm ready to go, because going out cold and going out, not stretched, not ready, not warmed up, that's when you're going to get your injuries.
One thing about it, too, is probably sometimes not all about one pop. When it pops, and well, it popped, it must be okay, and I popped it, so I must have got it back in order again. I think you got to probably keep stretching and keep on stretching, probably to keep that stuff working.
Absolutely. You got to stay warm. And even, if you've got a particular issue or maybe you've been having like a hamstring strain or something that's bothering you, one of the ways I like to tell people too to keep that warm is to get like a compression sleeve. So that can kind of help it. So, because if you go from a seated position, then you go to stand up, you're like, oh, I'm a little tight now, I gotta get moving. But that compression sleeve can help keep it warm in the meantime.
Yeah, because I was doing the football game back on Thanksgiving this year, got one of those hamstring pulls, one of the first ones I've had. You get one of those, it's like stark realization. That is some painful stuff, and it doesn't really go away very quickly either.
It does not, especially for our athletes that get those in the middle of the season and then have to keep performing. That's really hard for them to deal with. So you
played basketball. As we kind of close the interview and discussion with Dr. Bailey, what was the mental focus about basketball that made you a better basketball player? Because it's not always determined how much skill or athleticism you have. Sometimes it's about mental focus. What was it about the mental focus about the game that made you a good basketball player?
So I think for me, honestly, you've got to be able to react to the people that are on your team and react to what's happening around you. For me, I think I really kind of became a better player when I became a better teammate. So the more you get to know the people that you play with, and the more you can kind of anticipate what their thoughts are going to be, what their moves are going to be, things like that, that's what's really going to be able to set you apart.
So you got to really adjust to your teammates then.
Yep.
Because my problem always was I worked hard, trained hard. I'm thinking, I'm working so hard. These other guys don't work as hard. I have trouble, correlating with these people here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And we always said hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. But at the same time, you got to make sure that you've got that good thought process as well. And just being a team player, there are times when you're not the man for the job, and that's okay. But you got to know who is, and you got to be able to say, okay, I'm going to give them the ball for this one.
What was the most fun thing you enjoyed about playing basketball?
The teammates. Honestly, I absolutely love being a part of a team, and I think that's one of the big reasons why I chose the career that I did, because I saw the importance of sports. I saw the importance of, growing up, having that type of camaraderie with your teammates and things like that, and I very much felt like that was still this, but in a grown-up job form.
Mm-hmm. Now, do you still keep up with your teammates today?
Yeah, absolutely. Still best friends with many of them.
I know a lot of people who have come through that team organization work over the years. They just kind of keep close watch and close contact with their friends and teammates from back in the day.
Yep, absolutely.
Was your teammate winning any championships?
Yeah, so I played a lot of AAU. I went to a smaller school, so my school never really did that great, but I played a lot of AAU, and we did win some championships with that.
Did a lot of travel ball then, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And you got a lot of it from your grandfather, I guess?
Yeah. So actually, pretty much all my family are big in sports. So my grandfather played basketball, basketball and football. My dad played, he was a big golfer, actually, and also played basketball. My mom played basketball. It's just kind of in my blood. So.
It's pretty big in Ohio. Basketball is bigger in Ohio than people realize. Ohio State back in the 60s, I guess, back in those days, had some really good basketball players, and Ohio football has always been huge.
Always. Buckeye through and through. So.
Yeah, because there's a coach here locally. I remember he's out of Salina, I think it is, in Ohio there, and there's just all kinds of Ohio towns and cities and places where that it's just so big. Coach Rolfus is his name. He was at Page, now he's over at Oak Grove, but he came here from Ohio, and I mean that Ohio blood, I mean, it runs pretty thick as far as that goes. And West Virginia is not too far away, and Pennsylvania, those areas right there, those three areas are very big into football.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was raised from a young age to be an Ohio State football fan. So
you guys go to Ohio State football games on Saturdays?
Yep.
Your family did?
Yep, absolutely.
Wow.
Yep. If we weren't there, we were watching them on the TV with the whole family.
Oh, yeah, I guess huge crowds at those games too back in those days.
Absolutely. I can remember being all the way at the top of the horseshoe, and it was so hot one day we had to leave because it was that bad. And I've also been there when it's been so cold that you had to leave.
You've got some autographed photos on your wall here in your office. Saw Archie Griffin there and some other big names. But who were the key names of Ohio State football when you were watching back when you were coming through there? Remember any of the key names back then?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I will actually tell you, I can remember being a kid, and for some reason, one of my favorite players was Chris Gamble. I just thought he was so interesting to watch. I remember he was number 7, and at the time, he actually wasn't that big. So for him, that was just one of my favorite players for some reason. And then James Laurinaitis was also a big one.
Oh, Laurinaitis.
Yeah, that was another
linebacker.
Favorite. I'm just thinking now of all the jerseys that I had when I was younger. So he was one of my favorites as well. But, we've got all sorts of,
and I'm surprised Laurinaitis did not go into professional wrestling since his family was so big in wrestling back in his day. He should have capitalized on that a little bit too. But he had a good career.
He sure did. It was funny. My husband actually plays a trivia game, and he's not from Ohio, but he's a pretty big sports fan. And he got stumped on one day about an Ohio State football player that his dad was a professional wrestler. And I said, well, that was James Laurinaitis, obviously.
Absolutely, yeah. Road Warriors, Animal and Hawk. Back in there, they were very big.
Yeah.
Well, Dr. Medley, pleasure talking to you today. We've had a good conversation, and Coach Kramer's got to be proud of what you're doing. He made a good choice. He brought you in. Appreciate your time and your work and your efforts. We'll see you at Dudley games this year.
Absolutely.
And best to your family and your little daughter and the families. They continue to grow.
Thank you. I appreciate it.